Hello, everybody, and welcome to Power Players on We Are the People. And guys, I want you to go to wearethepeople.org and check out all the media content that they've got there. This new network that we're creating is phenomenal. It's going to start rivaling everything that's out there in Utah for some real content and some real news. And today, the guest that we have is phenomenal. We have a wonderful guest of ours who, again, is a friend of mine. And we've known each other now for probably 3 years, but he's also a neighbor, and so I have a lot of respect for this guest and his family, the example that he leads in the community and in his life, and so we're super proud to have him on today, and so I'm gonna just jump right into it, and we're gonna introduce our guest today. Our guest is Rob Hitchcock. Rob, how you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
It's great to have you, and we appreciate you being here.
Thanks for having me.
So I'm going to do just a quick little bio on Rob. And again, first and foremost, Rob is a friend, and it's been good to be able to work with Rob on a professional level and to live with him in the same neighborhood and to see how he operates and his family and that type of thing. And I can tell you he's a great example and a great strength to the community that we live in. So Rob is the current president and CEO of Select Health. Select Health is a large insurance organization here. So and it's let's see, here we go, the nonprofit health plan subsidiary of Intermountain Health, serving more than 1 million members in Utah, Idaho, and Nevada. His leadership focus is ensuring members have access to high-quality care and coverage, complementing Intermountain's mission of helping people live the healthiest lives possible. Before joining Select Health, Rob built a distinguished 25-plus year career in executive leadership roles for national insurance provider organizations. Most recently, he served as the chief operating officer for, is it
Carillon.
Carillon, okay. I want to make sure I pronounce that correctly. A division of Anthem. He has held various executive leadership roles for other organizations, including Blue Cross and Blue Shield, Centene,
Correct,
and Humana. Rob and his wife, Michelle, are proud to call Salt Lake City home. So Rob just moved recently, a couple years ago, out of the Chicago area. They were living in a little suburb.
That's right.
And we're glad that they're here in Salt Lake. And we had just a quick backstory. We had a little development that we were doing. And I think maybe one of his wife's family members saw a sign that we had go up.
I did.
Oh, were you in town?
Yes. So I had been going to the Parade of Homes for a long time, and the houses that I liked, I found out that it's, your company, Silverhawk. And so I loved them. And then I saw a sign saying Silverhawk's developing this, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I called it immediately.
Were you in town on vacation or are you on business?
Vacation.
So you've got both family, both your parents and your wife's parents are residents of Utah.
Correct.
So, okay. And I remember you telling me that now. So Rob called the sign and says, hey, we want to build in this neighborhood. And by virtue of that, he's a neighbor of ours. And so any of you guys that have either built a home or have dealt with a home builder know that at the end of the home, it's either a love-hate, and so we're grateful to call Rob a friend. And I'll tell you what, he's a super great guy. So with that being said, I want to jump into this real quick with you on your upbringing. And again, with Power Players, the focus is on people that have become or had an effect on society, on the community, on not only your family, but for positive. And that doesn't necessarily mean always career. Career is obviously a big step in being able to influence a lot of people, influence corporate America. And so that's huge. But what type of a father, what type of what do you love to do in your spare time? How do you serve your church, in the community, those types of things. And so I want to jump into basically tell us from inception, where were you born? What was your family life? Where do you fit in? And what motivated you to do what you're doing currently? So if you'll kind of go through those steps, and we'll let you take it. Thanks, Rob.
Yeah, well, thank you. I was born and raised here in Salt Lake City, mouth of Big Cottonwood Canyon. And my parents were, great parents. And my dad worked construction for a lot of years with companies like Cannon and Jacobson and Oakland. stuff like that. So I always grew up, he would take me in the office when I was a kid, and he would show me the blueprints, and he would walk me through them. And so I kind of learned how to do that. And then I actually put myself through college. My dad's name was Jerry, so I call it the Jerry Hitchcock Scholarship, because he would get me a summer construction job every year. And what that meant was I just wheelbarrowed a lot of cement and carried a lot of 2x4s.
Right.
So I would basically just help all the carpenters with whatever they need. They would tell me, I need this and this and this, and then I'd go hunt the whole site and try to find it and bring it to them. So I grew up with that kind of background. And my mom was a teacher for Butler Elementary in the Jordan School District, and she taught swimming. And so swimming was a big deal in our house. So I swam from the age of 6 until I was 18.
So wait a minute. I didn't know you were a swimmer. Did you swim competitively in high school then?
I did. I was a 2-time individual state champion, and then including relays, a 4-time state champion.
My level of respect went up just a little bit, because swimming is one of the hardest sports, I think, out there to do it right.
It's a lonely sport.
It is.
So you're just got head in the water, looking at the bottom of the pool the whole time. But we swam all the time, and I got into swimming because I was so ill as a kid. And my parents were like, well, he's such a sick kid that let's get him into some sports. And so they put me into swimming. And I'll never forget the first time they put me in the big pool to swim. I just cried. I think I swam one lap and hung on the wall and just cried. I thought, this is just terrible. But then that led to, 12 years of competitive swimming. And
what, if you don't mind me asking, as a child, what were you sick with?
I had measles. I don't know anybody that has measles. But I had measles, and then I just had a lot of illnesses. I was just always just sick all the time. And then once they put me into swimming, then I ended up being pretty healthy.
With all the movement, it probably helped cure you, right?
Yeah,
push it through your body.
That's
okay,
exactly right.
All right.
So my parents were those type of people, and then my dad would also have me do push-ups all the time, and he would pay me a penny a push-up. And I got to the point where I was doing like 150 push-ups, so I had to stop because he couldn't afford it anymore. So they were kind of people that I guess they would look at adversity and try to figure out how to overcome it.
Okay, that's great parenting.
Yeah, it was. They were great. They were great. So I did that, and of course, if I look at people who were influential in my life, my swimming coach, who was a guy named Russ Lauber, I spent 5 hours a day with that guy, and from the age of 6 all the way till 18. So he was very influential, and I just did that all the time. By the time I got to be 18, though, I was just so tired of swimming that I didn't pursue it anymore. But I love it, and to this day I still get in the pool and swim a little bit.
That's good to know. So so high school, and what high school did you attend?
Brighton.
So you're a Bengal.
I'm a Bengal.
That's right. All right. That's some of the best, right?
Yeah. And my wife attended Brighton as well, and then my wife had my mom as a teacher at Butler Middle School. So. And then I had her father as like a young men's advisor as growing up,
Okay.
So he has pictures of me when I was 10 years old.
That's right. You guys kind of knew each other prior to knowing each other. Or you knew of each other, or you were missing as you were. Tell me that real quick.
I knew her family. I didn't know her. I'm six and a half years older than my wife. So that would have been inappropriate if I knew her, you know what I'm saying? So, but I knew her parents really well, and I knew her family really well. And her dad was an entrepreneur just like you. He created his own company and built it up and became very successful and really started from nothing and built something. And he's just a good guy. And so I knew when I started dating my wife, I knew the family that she came from, that they were really hardworking and that they were really kind of honest and that they treated people well. And so there was a lot of comfort to me when I started dating my wife that I knew exactly where she came from. And I knew exactly who her family was, and there was just no mystery there, which was very comforting to me. So, on the other hand, when I asked my wife, Michelle, to marry me, of course, I went to talk to her parents to get permission. And that was about a 1-hour lecture because they knew me since I was 10.
Okay.
So they knew who I was, and that led to a pretty long lecture of, treat our daughter well, which I obviously agreed to. I mean, we've been married 32 years, so.
Congratulations.
But they knew me as a kid, and when you know people your whole life, you know they're the good and bad about them, so.
Yeah, they treated you like a son.
They did.
At the time, even before you came in, so they wanted to make sure that you understood
the
what
roles.
they needed.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. Okay.
So
fair enough. So after high school, did you go to college right away? Did you go on an LDS mission? What was your next step in life?
I went to a year of college. Went to the University of Utah, and nothing against BYU or Weber State or Utah State. It's just it's hard to explain. But growing up in Salt Lake at that time, which I went to high school in the '80s, the University of Utah was the only option. I mean, I just didn't think of anything else. I think the other universities are great. I just went to the University of Utah and I loved it. Went there for a year, and then I went on a mission to for the LDS Church to Louisiana, Mississippi.
All right, so some deep south.
Deep South, that's right.
All right, so I'm sure that you learned a thing or two down there.
I learned the Bible as well as I learned anything else, And if you go back in time, that was the whole Jimmy Swaggart era, and so that was kind of interesting being in Louisiana at that time when all that was going on. And then of course I loved Louisiana and I loved Mississippi. I gained about 20 pounds on my mission because the food down there is so good. But it was hard. It was the first time I'd really been away from my family, and back at that time you could call home twice a year,
Yeah.
But it was I don't know if it was life defining, but it certainly was something that was very difficult for me to do, and not only just being away from family, but dealing with that kind of environment in the Deep South. Not that there's anything negative, but it's very Bible based, which the LDS Church is as well. But it was just I found people to be they would embrace you and they would hate you all the same.
Yeah, there's a culture.
Yeah.
There's definitely a culture to it where
Right.
you're going to have the Bible Belt, and if you have anything that's not necessarily contrary but adding to it or whatever, they either loved you because you love Jesus along with them, or because you didn't see the way Jesus was in their eyes, they would hate you.
That's exactly right. And I guess I can't say that that's exclusive to Louisiana and Mississippi.
No.
I think that's probably the same everywhere. But I guess if there's one thing I learned there, it's that it's okay to have a different opinion, and it's okay if people are angry or don't like me. That's okay.
Yeah.
I got real comfortable with that real fast.
Would you say that you found a piece of yourself in the South there?
I think you did. I think I did, and I love the South, and I've been back to the South a lot. And I've lived in Florida, I've lived in Texas, I've lived in Kentucky, and I've lived in Virginia. I went to graduate school in Virginia, so I've spent a lot of time in the South. And my name is Robert Todd, and my dad was a huge Abraham Lincoln fan, and so I'm named after Robert Todd Lincoln. So I've read, not that I'm an expert, but I've read a lot about the Civil War and know a little bit about the South, and I love it. I love the culture. So you've moved quite a bit. It just becomes part of you when you live in a place like that, and you give so much of yourself. It just becomes part of who you are.
So I agree. I was in Virginia.
Yeah. Okay.
And we had the opportunity to see Appomattox, Lynchburg. I mean, they named a town Lynchburg for crying out loud.
I know.
Okay, if that tells you anything. But to see the people and to see the changes that have been made, even since the time like you were there, I was there. Leaps and bounds, right? But they still have a culture, and really, in my opinion, the culture of the South is very loving.
Yeah,
for the most part.
Yeah, I agree.
They're good country people that love God, love family, love food, and I'd say football.
Yeah.
Right?
Roll Tide, you know what I'm saying?
So after that, talk to me about, real quick, I want to hear about, again, how you and Michelle met, your wife, and she's pretty dang amazing. I can say that as myself. And then talk about your kids. You got 4 kids. I want to hear about the Hitchcock family.
Well, I got back from my mission, and then I finished up at the University of Utah. It took me 5 years to get through college. That's how smart I am. So, but I graduated, and then after I graduated, I was set up with my wife. It was actually there was no apps back then, so I was set up with her by my now brother-in-law, who was my best friend since I was 6 years old. And he said, "You need to go out with this gal." And I thought, well, I don't know if I want to, because I know her mom and dad. She's a sister-in-law to my best friend. So if I mess this up, then I could potentially mess up some relationships,
Yeah.
But I ended up going out with her, and the first time I went out with her, I'm like, oh my gosh, she's amazing. And so then we were married within 5 months.
You were married 5 months after
First
meeting.
day. That's right.
Oh, really?
That's right. So I also have to qualify that to say, no, she was not pregnant. We just wanted to get married. Yeah.
And that's kind of Rob's not the exception on this. That's a Utah cultural thing a lot of times. But I'll tell you, if it's right, it's right.
Yeah.
And clearly it's working over 30 plus years. And so I think that's phenomenal, right? Let's say you get married after 5 months, you get divorced after 5. Probably wasn't right.
I'm lucky. And like I said, I knew her family. I knew where she was from. So a lot of the uncertainty that you may have when you're dating somebody, I just didn't have that uncertainty.
Yeah.
I knew exactly who she was.
So now, and you've got 4 kids. I want you to talk real quick about each one in order and what they're doing and how they're moving and shaking in life.
So we've moved a lot. So we've kind of left kids all over the country. So our oldest is a nurse in Chicago. I have a daughter who's a nurse in Chicago. She works at a medical ICU. So she and then during the pandemic, she worked in the ER and clinics, and so she's first responder, and so we're very proud of her. It was a little difficult because she was living with us at the time, and so she was dealing with the pandemic and going into the hospital, going into the clinics and treating people, and then coming home, and so that was a bit of that was scary for us. I mean, I think we all had moments of just fear back then, but that was scary, but we decided, well, what are we going to do?
Live.
So, just exactly right. So we did, and then our second daughter, so she's amazing, our oldest daughter. Our second daughter is married, and she lives in Boston with her husband. And she's got a great career, and he's got a great career, and they just announced that they're expecting a baby. So we're pretty happy about that. So we're going to be first-time grandparents.
Congratulations.
Nice.
When's the first
April.
grandchild due? Okay.
April. Yeah.
Oh, congrats.
So yeah, it's very.
Is this the first time public?
First time, yeah.
All right.
First
I
time
like
public.
it.
Yeah, that's right. I hope I'm okay on that. She's announced it to other people, but so that's exciting. And then our third daughter is following in your footsteps, and she's graduating from BYU in December in construction management.
That's really cool.
It is pretty cool. It's cool for a lot of reasons because, first of all, we love construction, and second of all, she's female, and that industry could be pretty tough and rough, but she's pretty tough, and so we're pretty proud of that. She's accepted a job offer already, so she starts with a big D in January.
Okay.
And, so we're very proud of her. Her husband, she's married. Her husband's getting his degree in accounting from the University of Utah. So she goes to BYU, he goes to the University of Utah. So they may have some interesting conversations.
I can say quickly that I've spoken with her enough about this and her construction path, and I've congratulated her, and I just said, look, being a woman, it's obviously male dominated. I think it's 96% in construction. Now you go into the real estate type of things and loans and and it branches out, right? But construction in general is 96%. So she's one of the 4%. And if you can be in there as a female and you can tackle what mostly these men are doing, I think my hat's off to her. And I say, I don't care if you're male or female, just put the best qualified person in there.
She's so funny because she'll come home after work and she'll talk to me for 2 hours about rebar and concrete and oil flow, and I'm like, oh, this is just, she loves it.
It's great.
Kind of interesting. So we have worked with her quite a bit about how she gives comebacks.
Okay.
To some comments, So we've practiced that, and she's getting pretty good at that.
They don't teach you that in construction management, but you definitely need that in the construction industry.
And it's not that anything is inappropriate. It's just that you got to be able to, if somebody pushes, you got to push back a little bit, in an appropriate way.
And I think a lot of it is just understanding the nature of the job. And if you have the intelligence to understand what it is, you can push back with facts.
Yeah. And she's great at that. So, and then my youngest son graduated from Corner Canyon, went to a semester at BYU, and now is at the LDS Missionary Training Center in Provo on his way to Fiji.
Bula. Fiji. And you've been there. I've never been to Fiji, but I've heard it's phenomenal.
Just by accident, because we found out he was going to Fiji on his mission, and we had planned a trip there that we'd been planning for a year, and so we went there, and it's just it's a great place. It's very different than Hawaii. It's very similar in that it's beachy, it's ocean, it's a lot of surfing and diving, but it's also very different in that it's a very agricultural based society. It's also kind of 1800s based society. You know, they still do their farming by hand. There's no mechanisms or machines that they use. They cook over open fires. They live a very simple life, but
very
also
humble.
incredibly happy. They're interesting enough. I guess they're the only island in the Pacific that didn't have to import food during the pandemic.
Really?
So they're they're very self-sustaining and hardworking and just good people.
Something to be learned from that. Now I understand that maybe the missionaries down there wear skirts.
Yeah, so
and sandals.
It's funny, we got the letter and it's like, buy waterproof sandals, buy Crocs, but you'll be wearing a skirt. It's awesome.
That's pretty cool.
That is pretty cool.
Right?
Yeah, because you and I were in that freaking humidity.
That's awful.
Wearing a tie and a shirt and pants, So
well, and I think that to be honest, this is Rob's first missionary out, and I think that's a big deal. I asked him the other day how he was doing. He goes, "Not good, Tom." So I know it's been almost a week now, if that, and so I know you guys got one last golf game in before.
Yep.
But
great.
How are you doing right now? What are your thoughts on him?
Well, I completely underappreciated. Like when I went on my mission, it was an adventure, right? It was fun. It was an adventure, and but I underappreciated the sacrifice that parents make. So, it's just been a lot harder than I thought it would. And at the same time, they're doing a good thing, and they're going to learn a lot, and they're going to give back to society, and they're going to do some good. So you don't want them not to go.
Sure.
But part of me hopes they don't.
Yeah, I hear.
Don't go, but I mean, I'm happy he's going, but it's very, very difficult.
Any parent, I think that's a bittersweet moment. But I'll tell you what, anybody that's going to go out and talk about Christ, whether it's it doesn't matter what religion you're in. If you're going to talk about something good and you're going to serve for 2 years, what better place for a young man or young woman to be?
I find myself being very sad. And then I also think, well, how selfish is that? I'm holding this kid back. I'm holding him back from doing good. So I have no right to do that. So, he's out.
Yeah. Well, I congratulate you on an amazing family.
Yeah.
From the outside, a great marriage and family, and at least from what I can see. And a lot of that is proof of also your professional career. Yeah. You can't be where you're at today if you're not a driven person, if you're not a successful person, if you don't have certain work habits. And so I want to go into that and just talk about your professional career and what's led you here today. And then really I want you to touch on the people that you've been able to help. Maybe if you've got any stories in there of something of being able to help someone and change their lives in the career that you do, not just through corporate America, but maybe there's a one-off.
Yeah. Well, I grew up in Utah. I always wanted to get into healthcare for some reason. And I tried to get jobs there was a health plan in Salt Lake at the time called FHP. There was Intermountain, of course. And I just could never get a job. And I graduated from the University of Utah in 91. And, people probably don't remember this, but there was a pretty significant recession in 91. And so just couldn't get a job. And so I thought, well, I wanted to get a graduate degree anyway. And at the time, MBAs were kind of a dime a dozen. And so I ended up getting my master's in health administration in Richmond from Virginia Commonwealth University. And so I did that, and it was a 3-year program. And so my wife and I got married in July, and we left for Richmond in August. We left, and that was 30 years ago, and we didn't come back to Utah for 30 years. And in the meantime, we moved 12 different times. We lived in Florida and Kentucky, Michigan, Minnesota, Texas, Missouri. We're in St. Louis. And so anyway, we just moved a lot. And what was interesting about that was when we went out to graduate school, my wife, first time for her being away from home. And she just handled it like a champ. I mean, she went out there, we got a job, and, I was putting myself through school, and then we started my career, and she moved 12 times and uprooted the family. And, if I look back on my career, sometimes I have a lot of guilt about my career because I moved the family so much. And an interesting fact about my family is there's, 4 kids, and me and Michelle, we were all born in different states. That's how many times we moved.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's, that's not a good thing, I don't think, at the end of the day. But it's also, it is a good thing. My kids, the other interesting fact is none of my kids finished at the high school that they started. So that caused them to have to adapt. And at the time, they each had their challenges with that, including my boy. But I think at the end of the day, it just makes them stronger. And you have to develop social skills. You have to learn how to, cope. You have to learn how to adapt. And I think that's been pretty powerful for them. Not saying it was easy, but I think it's been a good thing at the end of the day. So I did that, and I started my career. And so I give a lot of credit to my wife, because I don't think there's too many people that would have allowed me to chase my career like that.
Yeah.
I tell people all the time that you can decide to stay in a geography, which is not a bad thing, or you can decide to move. If you stay in a geography, perhaps what happens is you don't get promoted as quickly. Mm-hmm. But if you move, you get promoted quicker.
Yeah.
And so I chased my career, and my wife was incredibly supportive of that. And there was a lot of up and downs and bumps in the road with that, but she was really just steady through the whole thing. I give her a lot of credit for that. And then she did a great job raising our kids, and I was right there with her. But a lot of times my job was on an airplane 3 or 4 days a week. And so my wife was alone a lot. And, I struggle with that looking back on my career. Could I have made different decisions? Could I have done different things? But thank goodness I had a strong wife who had strong values and raised our kids really, really well.
Well, here's a way to look at it. You're here now.
That's right.
And, I don't think that anything good comes without a sacrifice. So that was your sacrifice. That was the Hitchcock sacrifice that you had to make to be in a position where you can spend time.
Right.
Right?
Right. And that's what's happened later in my career. I now have a lot of time. And so I've enjoyed that. And because I think when you're raising kids, there's a lot of philosophies on how you raise kids. And we basically, in our family, we had 4 rules for our kids, because I didn't want to give them too many rules.
Yeah.
But our 4 rules were that you had to go to church.
Okay.
You had to do well in school. You had to play a sport, and you had to play a musical instrument.
Okay.
Those were our 4 rules.
Okay.
Good or bad. So if they came home with purple hair, that wasn't one of the rules.
Yeah.
So we're like, okay, well, you can do that, and of course we hope that they didn't get involved in drugs and stuff like that. But then the other thing was we worked really hard to, even after I just said, I was on the road a lot, but we worked really hard. I think at the end of the day, the most important thing is spending time.
Yeah.
Just time. And that's hard because none of us have a lot of time. But in my opinion, if you don't spend enough time with your kids, then I think that's where some struggles happen.
Well, I think that any parent that's chasing anything has these types of thoughts.
It's a little bit of guilt. I think at the end of the day, if you don't have a little bit of guilt as a parent, then
what could I have done better?
Exactly. You should have that.
What more could I have done? What more time could I have spent with my daughters or my son or whatever, right? And that's the one commodity that no one has more of.
Right.
It's all the same for everybody. We got 24 hours in a day.
Right.
And I think it was, Bruce Lee, and maybe I'm messing this one up, but I think it was Bruce Lee that said, do not give your kids everything they want. Teach them everything they need to know. Because when you spend time with your kids, they're going to remember the time that you spent and what you taught them. Yep. They're going to remember that you taught them how to ride a bike, how to read a book, how to, hang out in a crowd, how to be socially acceptable, how to, comb their hair, whatever. All these little things are the sum total of what you taught them when they were little all through whatever. And then obviously they're going to pick up, things from society and the whole culture. But I think, you're right. Time is definitely there. But I think that, I asked myself that same question about time, and then I have to refocus.
Right.
And there's a time and a season too.
Right. That's right. And, when you're younger, you gotta work, you do. And so then I think about my professional career. If I think about the things that I appreciated, I say I was trained by the mics. So there was a gentleman who was the CEO of Humana that had a big influence on my career. And then Michael Neidorf, who's the CEO of Centene, had a big influence on my career. And then a guy named Mike Seltzer, who had a big, so I trained by the mics.
Okay.
And one thing they had in common was spending time with me. They would go with me, we'd go to meetings, and then they would spend an enormous amount of time with me just saying, what did you learn? What do you think you should do? And they just mentored me a lot. And so what I've tried to do in my career with folks is to do that same thing. I especially now, I view myself, I'm closer to the end of my career than the beginning, and I've experienced a lot, and I learned a lot, and I want to give that back to the people that I work with, to share that knowledge and that learning.
Yeah.
And it's by spending time with them. And so I try to do that. And then, as far as helping people, I also believe my role in business is to take, if it's bad news, I take accountability for the bad news. If it's good news, I give credit.
Good for you.
Now,
that's a leader.
Yeah. Now, in the back, when it's bad news, then of course I'm going to have a conversation with the person to say, what could we have done better? How could you have prevented this? But in public, I am ultimately the CEO. It's my, it's my accountability. So I do that a lot. And then I also feel like it's my job, if it's appropriate, to defend my people. And
when you know they're not wrong,
that's right.
Or defending maybe why they did something.
Exactly right.
Okay.
And so I think that's a big part of my role, is to defend them. And if they're right, and if they deserve that. And most often they are. I mean, people don't show up to work, generally speaking, thinking, how am I going to do a bad job today?
How am I going to screw up today?
And so I try to do those things. And so I think about the people that I've helped. There's been a lot of people that there's been people I put my career on the line to say, this is a good person. They're doing the right thing. And I'm going to defend them. And I've even had people say, well, then if you're not going to let them go, I will. And I say, well, then, I'll go too then.
Yeah.
Right. And there's one particular individual who's now very high up in a company that, the CEO at the time wanted to let that person go, and now they're incredibly successful. So I just am a big believer that if you have good talent, I think people in the business world tend to throw that away too quickly and too often.
Yeah.
And even if they make mistakes, there's a great movie called The World According to Garp with Robin Williams, and he's looking at a house, and while he's looking at a house, a plane flies over his head and crashes into the house. And he's like, I'll take it. And the realtor's like, are you kidding me? A plane just crashed into that. And he goes, yeah, but it'll never happen again, And so I think a lot of mistakes in business, those are learning moments. And so why would you get rid of somebody when they've just learned and they'll never make that mistake again?
Yeah.
Right. So I think about that, but I'll also admit that I don't particularly know the impact I'm having on people. I try to be optimistic. I try to paint a future that is good. Try to be very specific on what I think the priorities are, and then I try to treat people with respect, and I try to bring a little bit of humor into the workforce. And I talked to my wife about this. I'm like, I'm not exactly sure what impact I've had, but then periodically I'll get a note from somebody saying, hey, you made a big difference in my life. And to me, that's incredibly rewarding. But I'll also admit that I'm not exactly I don't think you're always aware of the impact you're having on people. And so I think the lesson is people are watching you all the time, and they're watching how you behave and how you treat them. My brother is a retired, he's a 2-star admiral, retired from the Navy.
Okay.
So, and I have a lot of respect for him, and I've learned a lot about management theory from him. And and he's not particularly religious, but to me he described religion in the best way. He said, religion at the end of the day is how you treat other people. And I try to take that into the workforce about treating people with respect, treating them with kindness. But I also think you can be firm and hold people accountable, but you can do it in a way that is ultimately kind and uplifting.
Well, that's a breath of fresh air, because again, as the leader of a large corporate company here, that's something that I think that your the folks that are working with you and under you would enjoy hearing. And I think anybody that's leading a company like this, any leader for that matter, should have these types of attributes, where it's not necessarily something happens, it's captain of the ship, right? You're going down with that ship,
Right.
Okay, you're the coach, you're the captain, you're the engineer of the train, whatever it may be. You're the guy.
Yeah.
Okay, and you're accepting the bad that comes your way, and when it's good, give praise to who did it.
Right.
Right. You don't need to say, "Hey, thank you."
Right.
You know, if you hear a good coach up there talking after a game, they'll say, "Hey, the team did great.
Yeah.
They followed the plays. They did whatever." I heard this little quote the other day. A young 11-year-old kid had asked a coach, what was more important? Understand for defense, for running the skills plays or attitude. And he said, "Listen, young man, that's one of the best questions I've ever heard. So a lot of respect to you."
Yeah.
And he said, "Look, running the skills and doing all the different plays are very important. But if you don't have the right attitude to keep us together as a team, none of that matters."
Right.
So I think that comes from the top down. They see the CEO or the top of the head, doing whatever, that's happening there. You're gonna send a culture shock through people if they've never experienced that before.
I agree. One analogy somebody shared with me was like the leader is like a clock, and if the leader is the tiny little cog at the top of the clock, you're the CEO or you're the leader, and if you rotate one click, then all the wheels at the bottom of the clock are spinning.
Yeah.
So you have to be I try to be very cognizant about what is my attitude. Am I coming in with, am I happy? Am I projecting optimism? And am I trying to lift people up? It's a huge focus of mine.
I love it.
Yeah, I learned it early in my career. I worked for this hospital system in Kalamazoo, Michigan. And one time the CEO pulled me into the office and he said, "Rob, are you having fun here?" And I said, yeah, but I was brand new in my career. I said, "Yeah, I'm having a good," because you never talk in meetings. And you never smile. And I'm like, well, because I don't know what to say and I don't know what's going on. And so I figure I'll just, shut up and not say anything, And he goes, "Well, the problem with that is people think you're a jerk." And so I learned very early. Now I walk into a room, first thing I do is smile.
Yeah.
And say hello to people.
Say hi.
"How are you doing?" And it's a little thing like that.
There's something to be said for that because it sets, you may even be in a bad mood, but that'll brighten you just by saying hello to others.
Right.
There's experiments that have been done when you're on the streets and you don't know anybody and you can literally just say hello. You can say, "Hello, how are you?" And each time you add a little bit to it, you're talking and asking about them.
Yep.
"Hey, how are you? I love your hat."
Yeah.
Or, "Hey, how are you? I love your hat and you've got a great smile." And you see what happens to these people and they just, even if they're having a bad day, you can take someone out of a depression as just the simplest little form as a stranger. And so you're right, that has an impact on meetings, right?
Right. Yeah, it lifts them up,
So is that what you do now?
It also makes them calm.
Yeah.
So then even if you have hard conversations, they're comfortable, they're confident that, they're not going to get in trouble and, it's going to be okay.
So I assume is that how you do your meetings? You can conduct your meetings accordingly now.
Exactly.
Okay.
Right. Yeah.
So a lot can be learned from that. All right. Hey, that's fantastic. Now I want you to talk about the fun stuff.
Yep.
No, look, it's like me. It's not what I do as a career. It's not who I am. It's what I do.
Yep.
So what do you like to do in your spare time, your fun time? I want you to talk about some of your hunting, your ranch, that type of thing. I'll let you take it away on the things you like to do.
Yeah, later in life, I got into hunting, and I like hunting for a lot of reasons. First of all, I think sometimes if you talk to folks, and if they're opposed to hunting, I think we've just, as a society, become disconnected from our food source. The fact of the matter is anything you eat on the table or you buy out of the grocery store has been killed.
Yeah.
Or harvested, however you want to say. So I like that. I like being close to the food source. But more importantly, I got into it as a way to spend time with my kids. And I'll be honest, I was a little intimidated on how to raise girls. And so I just decided I'm going to take my girls and they're going to do everything I like to do.
Yeah.
Right or wrong.
That's cool.
And so I started taking them hunting as well, and my boy. And what I found, though, is in the hunting community, it can be a little rough. And so it was hard for me to find a place that I could take my girls and that they would be treated, with certain respect and they would feel comfortable. And so I found this place in Texas. I have a hunting lease in Texas, and it's very family friendly. You can bring your kids down there, And so that's what I do. I go down there and I feel very comfortable taking my girls, although they're grown and gone now. So it was just me and my boy. But I was looking for that kind of family friendly environment, and I found that. But I love hunting to get close to the food source, but also it's just a social thing, and it's an opportunity for me to spend time with my kids, which was a lot of fun.
I think that's a great way to do it.
Yeah.
You can dial everything in. There's a lot that goes into hunting.
Well, the problem is too, is you always get in trouble. You're always getting lost. You're always, you're losing equipment and you're trying to find it. And so working through those problems with your kids and having them be part of the solution is really empowering to them. And especially as they learn to kind of stalk an animal or harvest an animal and they're doing it on their own, it builds an enormous amount of confidence.
Yeah.
And also from a parent perspective, I began to have a lot of confidence in my kids. I'm like, oh, they kind of know how to do this, and they're pretty talented and they're pretty smart. And I think it benefited both of us. So I love it for that reason.
I think that's great to be able to problem solve out in an area where you need to figure something out. And they're gonna find a way to do it. And typically you find out, like you said, my kids are actually smarter than me at problem solving, at whatever, and they're calm.
Yeah.
Dad, we got it.
Yeah. There was one time I got lost with my boy, and I panicked, and he did not. And he's the one that got us out of the problem.
How far away were you from your truck?
I was literally 20 yards.
Really?
But the brush was so thick that we were totally turned around. We had no idea where we were. But he stayed calm. Yeah. And so for me, that was a big learning as a parent, And the other thing I like is with some of my daughters, they're better at shooting a shotgun than I am. And we have these kind of shoot-offs or competitions. And I love it because my daughter walks up, she's cute. And there's all these, 50-year-old men, and they're like, oh, this is adorable. Here's a, young lady. This is awesome. And then she beats them. And then it's not so adorable. They start getting a little pissed off, and I'm like, oh, I love it.
Now it's on.
I love it. Exactly. I love it. I love it.
So tell me some of the animals that you hunt. And I know you've been into Texas, maybe Georgia. Yeah. Talk about some of those real quick.
Mostly Texas. So a white-tailed deer in the south is what it is. I know it's mule deer here in Utah. And to be honest with you, I haven't hunted in Utah. I don't know how to hunt, so I got to figure that out. But so white-tailed, and then they have an animal down there called a nilgai, which is technically an antelope, but it gets speed about 400 to 600 pounds. It's a big animal.
I have to keep asking Rob what this is and how to pronounce it. It's like a deer, an antelope, right?
It's an antelope technically, and
the meat tastes like
bison. It's really lean and it's not gamey at all. And so what happened in the 1920s, the King Ranch in Texas began to import a lot of animals from all over the world, and because they're a very large cattle ranch, as everybody knows. But then they started importing these animals for hunting. And one of the animals they imported was this nilgai from India. And nilgai means, nil is actually blue and gai is cow.
Okay.
And so it's a blue cow is the name of it. But it's a lot of fun to hunt. They're really hard to hunt, and but also really really kind of rewarding when you get it. And so and they're only located in South Texas and northern Mexico because they need really hot weather.
Okay.
So we do that, and then they have hogs, and they have duck and dove. And
have you shot one of the large hogs, one of the feral hogs?
Yeah.
How big? What's your biggest one?
Well, I mean, they're not the kind of the boars that get up to like 300-400 pounds.
Okay.
But these are generally 80 to 150 pounds.
Still enough that they could take your leg out.
Yeah, but they're delicious too. And I know a lot of people don't like to eat them, but I like to eat them.
Yeah. And then as far as times, what are your typical hunting times? Are you heading down is it more in the heat? Is it more in the fall?
Yeah, so there's no season for nilgai, and of course then duck and deer. There are seasons for that. So we'll go down any time, and we just were down there in August, and 114 degrees in Texas, so that was kind of interesting. So, but that doesn't bother me. I lived in the Midwest a lot, and so my philosophy is weather will never stop me from doing what I want to do.
Yeah. Good.
So if it's hot or cold, I'll still going out there. So.
And then tell me about these long range shots. What's the rifle? I know that Owen was pretty darn good at these. Yeah. How far are we talking?
Well, I took him out. There's a shooting school in Price, Utah, and so I took my son out there, and he has a 6.5 Creedmoor, and I had a 338 Lapua, which is a huge mistake because you end up shooting about 600 rounds, and I finally just quit because my shoulder was so sore. But he had a 6.5, and then you build up through the process where you can shoot a milk jug at 1,000 yards. So he's got that sticker on on his car where he shot a milk jug.
1,000 yards.
Yeah, 1,000 yards, which is hard because
I mean, that's over half a mile, you guys.
it's
That's
ridiculous
over half a mile.
because then you have different winds. So at 300 yards, the wind might be blowing to the left, and at 600 yards, it might be blowing to the right. And so it's a bit of a skill.
That is a skill.
Yeah.
Well, maybe he's got a future in that. Is he better than you?
Oh, yeah.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Congratulations to Owen.
Yeah, congratulations. Exactly.
And you notice how Rob here perked up when he started talking about hunting and time with kids and that type of thing. I think that's kind of a big deal. Again, you guys, you need to take your career seriously. You need to take education seriously, or whatever it is, your entrepreneurship. But at the same time, do not lose sight of what's really important. Don't lose sight of your family. Don't lose sight of your faith. Don't lose sight of helping others in the community, because for me, that's what helps me live. That's what brings me to life as well. And I can tell just as we're talking there, it's like career's career, right? Like it's good to be there, but at the same time, it's a means to an end.
Right.
And so at the end of the day, when we have those 6 or 8 people carry our casket, what will they say?
Right.
You know, are they going to say, "Hey, he was a good businessman"?
Probably not.
He made a lot of money. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say one of the great things, you know, we talk about Larry Miller, how he changed the landscape of Utah forever. And, you know, Larry's one of my entrepreneurial heroes, right? But Larry had a weakness, and that weakness was too much work. Even though he has a great family, but he left a legacy behind, right? And he changed the landscape for sports, for business, for car dealerships, for all this stuff. But I remember when he got sick, and I don't remember exactly when it was, but he mentioned that he regretted spending too much time on the career.
Yeah.
And so even when Larry was laid to rest, they said many great things. They talked about his family. They talked about what he left behind, you know, the impact that he had. They didn't say Larry was, you know, he made this much money, that type of thing. They talked about his heart.
Right.
Who was Larry? And so I think that's one thing that's important. Again, seeing you beam like that, I think that's important to remember, is to take the things that remember. If it's not going to matter in 5 years, don't spend 5 minutes on it.
Right.
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 Well, Rob, any parting thoughts for the folks out there, for the young kids, for those that may be struggling with career, with family, that type of thing? Any parting thoughts you have for them?
I would just say, you know, keep at it. You know, and I think you know this. It's you know, life's a journey. It's and it's up and down, and sometimes you're up, and sometimes you're down, and you know, when you're down, get back up and keep going, and when you're up, be humble about it, because you know, things change all the time, and you know, I would just say, don't get discouraged. Keep going forward, and you're going to have a great life and a great career.
Well said. Humility and gratitude.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
Remember what you have and why you have it.
That's right. And then be tenacious at the same time. When things are down, just keep moving forward. And I know you've been through those things, and you know, you've led a great life and had a great career, and you're a huge example yourself. So.
Well, we appreciate people like you, leaders like you in the community, and in the state of Utah. You've got a big impact. And I really hope that this show will resonate to viewers out there, and you can see, you know, just one example of a man just trying to be the best that he possibly can. Rob Hitchcock, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Tom. Appreciate it. Thank you.
God bless you.